So the first question says, Mendel proposed that the factor controlling any character is discrete and independent. This proposition was based on, see, whenever you hear the word discrete, you have to think of Mendel's first law. Mendel's first law is nothing but the law of dominance. In that, Mendel has clearly stated that every character in a living organism is controlled by a discrete unit which is called a factor, isn't it? And these factors, they do not blend with each other, they occur in pairs. You know that one of the factor is dominant and one of the factor is recessive. So how did he make this proposition? Results of generation of a cross. Of course, this is a very vague sentence. They're just saying results, they're not saying what results exactly. The second statement says observations that offsprings of a cross made between the plants having two contrasting characters shows only one character without any blending. So what are these two characters or two contrasting characters that Mendel crossed? You all know the monohybrid cross of Mendel. He crossed a tall plant with a dwarf plant. So yes, he crossed plants bearing two contrasting traits of a character. And yes, in the F1 generation, all of them were tall. In the F1 generation, all of them were tall, indicating that there was no blending. And even in the F2 generation, if you all remember, the ratio is 3:1. Three of them were tall and one of them was dwarf. It was like there was a reappearance of tall character in the F2 generation. So this is the correct answer. This one tells us very clearly that they are discrete entities. Discrete means independent. And they don't contaminate with each other. They don't mix with each other. They don't blend with each other. That's why, based on his monohybrid cross, Mendel also gave another law. That is the second law. The second law is called the law of segregation, isn't it? In the law of segregation, he clearly says that there is no blending between the alleles and the allele stays as such. If it's a capital T allele, it is a capital T allele throughout. If it's a small t allele, it's a small t allele throughout. Even though they come together, even though they are present in a homologous pair, they don't mix with each other, they don't blend with each other. Okay? Self-pollination of offsprings, cross-pollination, these are all not observations. These are all basically just procedures that were followed by Mendel in order to perform his monohybrid cross. In a dihybrid cross, if you get a ratio of 9:3:3:1, what does it denote? It denotes that the alleles are segregating independently. Always remember, this ratio of 9:3:3:1, the first thing that should come to your mind is the concept of independent assortment. So independent assortment is what you should first think of. If you all recall, when Mendel conducted his famous dihybrid cross, I will just give you a gist here, what you should remember related to independent assortment. He took a plant which had round shape of seed with yellow color, and he crossed it with a plant which had wrinkled shape of seed with green color. So Mendel, the plants that he chose for the cross, they were round and yellow and wrinkled and green. But then after F1 generation, after F2 generation, in the F2 generation, he obtained two new varieties. The two new varieties that Mendel had obtained was round shape with green color and wrinkled shape with yellow color. So why are we calling this two new characters? We are calling this as two new varieties because for the first time, round has associated with green color and wrinkled shape has associated with yellow color. So this is called independent assortment. The inheritance of shape has nothing to do with the inheritance of color. They both are two different entities. It is not that round is always associated with yellow only. It is not that if you get a round seeded plant, it should have yellow colored seeds. The seed should always be round and yellow, or the seed should always be wrinkled and blue. In the dihybrid cross, in the F2 generation, when he got a ratio of 9:3:3:1, he saw two new combinations. For the first time, never before in his cross had he come across any plant bearing round with green seeds and wrinkled with yellow seeds. So that's how he came to a conclusion. Probably shape, the inheritance of shape, is not dependent on the inheritance of color. The inheritance of round and wrinkled has nothing to do with the inheritance of green and yellow. They both are two separate entities. Why is it so? Why are they two separate entities? If you consider the allele controlling round as capital R, the allele controlling yellow as capital Y, because round is dominant over wrinkled and yellow is dominant over green. And if you consider small r to be the allele controlling wrinkled nature and small y to be the allele controlling the green nature, it is seen that in the pea plant, the genes controlling the shape of the seed occupy one homologous pair, and the genes controlling the color of the seed occupy a different homologous pair. This is the basis of independent assortment. So say somewhere here you will have capital R and small r in this pair, and capital Y and small y in this pair. They are not located on the same homologous pair. Capital R and small r are on one homologous pair. Capital Y and small y are on another homologous pair. So they both are independently separating during meiosis. So during meiosis, it is not a rule that capital R and capital Y have to always get pulled to the upper pole, and small r and small y have to always get pulled towards the lower pole. We are bothered about meiosis because we need gametes, no? How do you get gametes? Only through meiosis. Sometimes capital R can also get pulled away, can get dragged along with small y, and similarly, small r can get dragged along with capital Y. So that's why you are getting, see, this is called independent assortment. When the pairs are getting separated, can you tell me during which phase of cell division do they get separated from each other? Yes, anyone? During which phase of cell division? I have shown metaphase, but actually they get separated during which phase? Yes, anaphase. Which anaphase? Anaphase 1 or anaphase 2, children? Anaphase 1 or 2? Yes, anaphase 1. That's when the homologous pairs get separated. Don't forget. It is always during anaphase 1 that pairs which were a pair for a very long time, the homologous pairs, they will get pulled away to the opposite poles. So in the, say I'm talking about formation of pollen. In a cell in the anther of the pea plant, during anaphase 1, this happens. Either the separation may happen along the lines of what I have shown in red arrows, or it may happen along the lines of what I have shown in blue and black arrows. It's not a rule that capital R, it should always happen along the red arrow. Imagine if it happens along the red arrow always, you will only get two types of gametes, round with yellow, wrinkled with green. You will not get new characters. But since separation or segregation during anaphase 1 can happen in either of these ways, you will get four types of gametes. Some gametes will have capital R along with capital Y. Some gametes will have capital R along with small y. Some gametes will have small r along with capital Y. And some gametes will have small r along with small y. So you are ending up with a set of four different types of gametes. Because this plant is producing four types of gametes, that's why in the F2 generation, you are getting two new varieties. So we should, the reason why we are getting two new varieties is because this plant is producing four different types of gametes. Why is this plant producing four different types of gametes? Because of this process that happens during anaphase 1. See the red arrow like I showed you, either capital R can go with capital Y, so you get a gamete with capital R and capital Y. Small r can go with small y, you will get a gamete with small r and small y. Or in some other cell in the anther, capital R would have gone along with small y. So you would have got a gamete, a pollen grain with capital R and small y. And in some other cell in the anther, this small r would have passed along with capital Y. So that cell will produce a pollen having small r, capital Y. So all of them have equal probabilities. That's why the frequency of obtaining a type of gamete among the four is 1 out of 4. 1 out of 4 is nothing but 25%. So this is the concept of independent assortment. Whether or not capital R goes to the North Pole or South Pole, it has nothing to do with whether capital Y is going to the North Pole or the South Pole. They can go anyways in whichever combination that randomly occurs during anaphase 1. In antirrhinum, a very simple question. Antirrhinum matches is also called the dog flower, or it is called the snapdragon. So what phenomenon do you see in this plant, children? You see a phenomenon called incomplete dominance. So we have studied this example, this plant, as an example of incomplete dominance. In incomplete dominance, please remember, both the phenotypic and the genotypic ratio is one and the same. Phenotypic ratio will be red is to pink is to white, that is 1 is to 2 is to 1. Genotypic ratio will be homozygous is to heterozygous is to homozygous recessive. Again, it will be 1 is to 2 is to 1. Okay, so both phenotypic and genotypic ratios will be the same in the case of incomplete dominance. All genes located on the same chromosome, they form a linkage group. What do you mean by linkage group? Linkage group, the number of linkage groups is equal to the number of different chromosomes present in a cell. Number of different chromosomes present in a cell. What do you mean by number of different chromosomes present in a cell? For example, if you take humans, we have 22 pairs of autosomes. 22 pairs of autosomes. And both in each pair there are 2. And these 2 are alike. So one pair, among the pair, 2 are alike. But if I take 2 pairs, then these 2 are different. This is different and this is different. So how many such different pairs do you have? You have 22 different pairs of autosomes. 22 different pairs of autosomes you have. So how many different chromosomes do we have? 22. We are considering both as one. Why do we consider both as one in a pair? Because both are genetically identical. Within a pair, both of them are genetically identical. So let me color this pair as in black. So these 2 chromosomes, I've colored them black because they are genetically identical. The neighbors, I've colored them red because they are genetically identical. But a black one and a red one are not identical. So black is different, red is different. How many such different pairs you have in your genome? You have 22 different pairs. So we have 22 linkage groups, but that is not the entire answer in the question that I am asking you. If you take a male human will have 22 pairs of autosome, plus he will have an X chromosome, plus he will have a Y chromosome. I should consider X chromosome as different and Y chromosome as different because X and Y chromosomes are not alike. So I will have how many linkage groups? 22 plus 1 plus 1. A human male will have 24 linkage groups. 24 different chromosomes. What about a human female? Again, a human female will have 22 pairs of autosomes plus X, but X and X are homologous chromosomes, so I can consider them as one because they are genetically identical. So a human female will have 23 linkage groups. Yes. So sometimes they may ask you the number of linkage groups in a human male, the number of linkage groups in a human female. The best way to calculate it is number of homologous pairs. But you should be careful when you're calculating it for a male, because in a male, X and Y is not a pair. There is a lot of differences that exist between X and Y chromosomes, so they both are not a pair. Okay, so you can remember it as number of different chromosomes in a cell, and you know that each pair is different from another pair, so therefore you can say number of pairs of chromosomes, number of different pairs of chromosomes in a cell, because we have 22 pairs plus 1x plus 1y. In case of male, the human male will have 24 linkage groups. Because a female has 22 pairs plus x and x, both x is considered as 1 because they are genetically identical, one type we consider them. So 22 plus 1, 23 pairs of, 23 linkage groups. Okay. ABO blood grouping in humans cites the example of. So what is ABO an example for? It is an example for both codominance as well as multiple allelism. Please remember that the gene that regulates your blood group, that is gene I, is existing in 3 different allelic forms. One is IA, and one is IB, and one is small I. So since it exists in 3 different allelic forms, we call this as multiple allelism, or we also call it as gene polymorphism. Another name for multiple allelism is gene polymorphism. And you know that when IA and IB come together, what will happen? The genotype, the blood group of the person will be AB blood group. So that means both of them are expressing each other. So when both of them express each other, we call this as cooperative dominance, or we call it as codominance. So an excellent example for both codominance as well as multiple allelism is the ABO blood group in case of humans. The movement of a gene from one linkage group to another linkage group. So this is an indirect question. So when they say a movement of a gene, you must remember, you will wonder how can a gene go from one chromosome to another. So movement of a gene means they're talking about a segment of a chromosome. Imagine that a segment of a chromosome breaks away. From one linkage group to another linkage group means what? Linkage group means, I told you, it is a pair. You have to take into account pairs of homologous chromosomes. So see, I have taken one pair here. I've colored them in the same color because they are genetically identical. And I've taken a second pair. This also I have colored them in a different, I've colored them same because they are genetically identical. Now imagine a part of this chromosome, this red chromosome, it breaks off like this. And it goes and attaches to this non-homologous chromosome. See, it's gone and attached over there. So this is called simple translocation. So when there is one segment that breaks apart from one chromosome and goes and attaches to a non-homologous chromosome. So from one linkage group to another linkage group means from one homologous pair to another non-homologous pair. See, the red one and the black ones are two different homologous pairs. They are not genetically identical. So one homologous pair to the other homologous pair, as you can see, the chromosomal segment, along with that segment, the gene is also moving, obviously. That segment carries a lot of genes in it. So it is called translocation. What if there is a mutual exchange? What if the red one goes and the black one comes from the other side? So this kind of mutual exchange also happens. If there is a mutual exchange, there is a classical example for a mutual exchange. Say, for example, this is the 9th chromosome. And say this is a member belonging to the 22nd pair. Yes, 9th and 22nd pair. See, the 9th one, it gets cut off and it goes and sits here in the 22nd one. And the 22nd chromosomal segment comes and attaches to the 9th one. So this is the 9th one, this is the 22nd chromosome. See, as you can see, there has been a mutual exchange. Okay, one part of the 9th chromosome has gone and it has become translocated to the longer arm of the 22nd chromosome. The segment from the longer arm of the 22nd chromosome has detached, has broken away, and it has attached itself to the longer arm of chromosome number 9. This chromosome is called the Philadelphia chromosome. This 22nd chromosome, which has received this segment, is referred to as the Philadelphia chromosome because it was identified in Philadelphia in 1959. And this results in a condition, yes, it results in a condition called CML, that is chronic, a cancerous condition where there is excess production of WBCs. It is called chronic myelogenous leukemia. Okay, so remember that this is not simple translocation. Two types of translocation are there. One is simple translocation, like I told you. Another one is reciprocal translocation. And we also call this reciprocal translocation as illegitimate crossing over. See, suppose actually they are not supposed to exchange segments between each other. Only the homologous members can exchange segments during crossing over. But here the segments are getting exchanged between non-homologous pairs. That's why there is another name given to it. We can either call it as reciprocal translocation, or we can call it as illegitimate crossing over. Illegitimate means against the natural, against the law. So the law is exchange of segment can only happen between the homologous members, but here the exchange of segment is happening between non-homologous members. Okay, so two types of translocation you can remember. One is simple translocation and one is reciprocal, or reciprocal translocation is also called illegitimate crossing over. To determine the genotype of a tall plant of F1 generation, Mendel crossed this plant with a dwarf plant of that generation. See, Mendel took a tall plant, a pure breeding tall plant and a pure breeding dwarf plant. In the F1 generation, what did Mendel get? In the F1 generation, he got tall plants. He could see with his eyes that they were tall plants, but he did not know that they were heterozygous. You know, because I'm writing it on the whiteboard, you can see. You can tell that, oh, I have written capital T, small t, that's why it's a heterozygote. But obviously Mendel couldn't see the genes. Mendel could only see the phenotype. So when you know the phenotype and when you do not know the genotype, what did Mendel do? He crossed it with a double recessive parent. And he got a ratio of 1:1. If you get a ratio of 1:1 in such a cross, which is called as a test cross, that means the plant under question is a heterozygote. Okay, so F1 plant, he knew very well that the F1 plant had a phenotype of tall, but he did not know whether the plant was capital T or capital T small t. To test the heterozygosity, sometimes they will ask you which is the one that is used to test heterozygosity, which is the cross. That time you have to remember, test the heterozygosity means you know the phenotype, but you don't know the genotype. You have to determine the genotype. So this cross allows determination of unknown genotype in a plant or in an organism whose phenotype is known. Which of the following will not result in variation among siblings? The answer says linkage. Why linkage will not result in variation among siblings? Because you know what happens in linkage. You all remember that in linkage, two genes are present very, very close to each other on the same chromosome. So when they are very, very close to each other on the same chromosome, they are like best friends. They don't want to let go of each other. So they will always stay together, and the probability of them getting separated during crossing over is very, very less. If they don't separate, you will see the same combination over and over again. So you will not see any variations at all. You will see very less or no variations at all. That's why it is called linkage. The fact that they are present together on the same chromosome itself is called linkage. Of course, you know, if their distance is very, very closer, it is called tight linkage. If they are present far away from each other, then it is referred to as loose linkage. Okay, so when there is linkage, don't forget, more of parental combinations are expressed. More of parental characters are expressed. If the parental characters are more in number, are more in proportion, then you can tell that the genes are not getting separated during crossing over. Why are they not getting separated during crossing over? Because they are so close to each other that the chances of a break happening between them during crossing over is very less. This is called linkage. This phenomenon is called linkage. Please go through both the crosses. In the NCERT, there is a cross A and there is a cross B. Isn't it? Both crosses were conducted by T.H. Morgan on Drosophila melanogaster. In cross A, what he did was he took a female Drosophila fly and crossed it with a male Drosophila fly. And when he took this, this was the female with X and X chromosome, the male with X and Y chromosome. The female had Y and W present very close to each other on the X chromosome, and the male also had Y plus and W plus present very close to each other. So here you know that if you don't see a plus sign, if I simply write Y, that means it is recessive. Not only is it recessive, it is mutant. It is something abnormal. But if I put a plus sign above Y, that means you know I am talking about a dominant gene, and the dominant gene happens to be normal. But we don't use the word normal, we use the word wild type, isn't it? So here, small y is something that is responsible for an abnormal character, that is yellow body, and small w is for an abnormal character, that is white eye. Whereas y plus, if you see a plus sign, I told you it is normal. So y plus is responsible for the normal body color, that is brown body, and w plus is responsible for the normal eye color, that is red eye. And if you see the cross A, the recombination frequency is very, very less. When you conduct this cross A in the F2 generation, if you calculate the percentage of parental combination and recombination frequency, it is just 1.3%. You will get new combinations at a frequency of just 1.3%. So this is called recombination frequency is equal to 1.3%. So recombination frequency is very low. You are getting new combinations of very low frequency. That's because the older combinations of yellow and white and brown and red are present so close to each other that they are examples of tight linkage. So you should remember this equation over here. Strength of linkage. Strength of linkage is inversely proportional to recombination frequency. So in this example, the recombination frequency is very low. It is just 1.3%. That means the strength of linkage is very high. That means if I say high, the genes are closer. If I say closer, the genes are exhibiting tight linkage. Okay, in cross B, you will get a different. In cross B, what Morgan did was, again, he took a female fly and a male Drosophila, but this time he was only bothered about eye color, that is W, and wing nature, and see how different, how far away these two genes are. So in male, it was W plus and M plus, and I'm not showing any gene on the Y chromosome because these genes are X-linked. I hope all of you remember that the genes which were studied by Morgan, the experiments conducted by Morgan, these genes were not located on the Y chromosome. They were located only on the X chromosome. And in Drosophila, the same kind of sex determination is seen as in humans. So the male Drosophila melanogaster has one X and one Y chromosome. I'm coloring the Y chromosome in blue. I'm not shown any gene on that chromosome. Again, what is this W and M? You should know, because sometimes they may give you this cross, a picture of this cross, and they may ask you to interpret it, isn't it? So W means, don't forget, there is no plus sign. So it is recessive and mutant, that is white eyes. M means, again, it is something abnormal. It is miniature wing. M is nothing but miniature wing. What about W plus? Just like the other cross, W plus means plus sign indicates dominant and wild type, so red eyes. M plus means normal wing. The wing is normal. The fruit fly can fly normally. Okay, so white eye, miniature wing, and red eye and normal wing. And notice how the genes are far away from each other. So you know what was the recombination frequency here? I guess 30, if I'm right, 37.2% it was. 37.2% is a very high recombination frequency in comparison to 1.3% recombination frequency. Why we are getting 37.2% of new combinations which are never seen in the parents? That means these genes W and M and W plus and M plus, they got separated very easily during crossing over because the distance between them is very large. The fact that the distance between them is very large on the same chromosome, we call this as loose linkage. So having a low recombination frequency is a sign of tight linkage. Having a high recombination frequency is a sign of loose linkage. So go through the crosses, children. This is just the parents I have shown here. In these two, on the left and the right column, I have shown you the parents of cross A and parents of cross B. Don't stop at F1 generation. If you remember, Morgan intercrossed the F1 generation, and in the F2 generation, he found out how many of them are exhibiting the same combination of characters which was seen in the parents. That is called parental combination. And how many of them are expressing new character combinations which were never before seen in the parents. Okay, and you are not bothered about parental combination. You are bothered about how many flies exhibit recombinant characters. Like in cross A, 1.3% of flies exhibit recombinant characters. Then you will wonder why the new combinations are so small, because the older combinations are stuck together. Why are they stuck together? Because they are close to each other on the chromosome. Chances of them getting separated during crossing over is minimal. The fact that they are very close to each other is nothing but it indicates that it is an example for tight linkage. So cross A is for tight linkage and cross B is for loose linkage. And of course, does anyone remember who was the one who wanted to put across the message about what is the distance between the genes? If somebody asks you how close, if I say the genes are close to each other, somebody may ask you how close are they? Or if I say the genes are far away from each other, how far away are they? You cannot take a scale and measure. I told you, you cannot measure it. You cannot see these genes. Yes, centimorgan, isn't it? Alfred Stewart Event. What did Alfred Stewart Event do? He was the student of T.H. Morgan. He said, because people are asking how close they are, how far they are, let's make them shut their mouth and let us just convert this recombination frequency into a unit of distance. Even though it is not accurate, of course, it puts across the message. If I say 1.3% recombination frequency, if I remove that percentage and if I express it as 1.3 centimorgan, then if I tell you, if you ask me how close are the genes, if I say 1.3, then you will ask me in the next cross how close are they? I'll say 37.2. Then it is very obvious that 1.3 is much closer in comparison to 37.2. In 37.2, the distance is very wide. That is at least giving us the message. It's serving its purpose. It's telling me that 1.3 is a closer distance and 37.2 is the far away distance. And wherever you got a Alfred Stewart event, the distance of 1.3, that is the case of tight linkage. And wherever there is 37.2, that is the case of loose linkage. Multiple alleles are present on. Where are these multiple alleles present? See, you may have, say for example, the gene that is controlling the blood group. There are 3 alleles, IA, IB, and small I. Let me call it as small I. But can I have all the 3 alleles at the same time in my body, in my cells? No. I will have any 2 of these 3. because I am diploid, no, because I am diploid, because in my cell chromosomes occur in pairs, and a gene occurs in only one homologous pair, it will not repeat itself in another homologous pair. So I cannot have all the three genes in my body, in my body cells. I will have any two out of these three genes. So they're asking where are they present. So if I have, say, if I take a homologous pair and say I have IA on one chromosome, so this point on the chromosome that where a gene is located is called locus. At the exact same position, I should have the other allele also. Only then I can call them as alleles. Remember, alleles are slightly different forms of a gene which occupy the same locus. They occupy the same locus of the homologous chromosome. When I say same locus, wherever you see one allele on one member of a homologous pair, the corresponding allele or the matching allele will be found at exactly the same location on the other member of the same homologous pair. If I write something like this, then it is wrong. See, for example, if I show you a pair of chromosomes like this, say this is one member of the homologous pair and this is another member of the homologous pair, and say I have IA on one and somewhere below I have written IB. This cannot be, because one is occupying a position somewhere above and one is occupying somewhere a position somewhere below at the lower reaches of the chromosome. This is not the definition of alleles. For you to call them as alleles, two genes which occupy a particular homologous pair must occupy matching positions. So I have to write it here only. Their position should be matching for me to call them as allele. So same locus, this is important, at the same locus of homologous chromosome. Some of the dominant traits studied by Mendel were round shape, green. So round shape is dominant. Round shape is dominant. Green seed color is recessive. Axial flower color. What about axial flower position? Is it dominant or recessive? Axial flower position is dominant. What about terminal? Terminal is recessive. Green pod is dominant. Inflated pod is dominant. So first two options, not all are dominant. Third option, violet flower is dominant. Green pod is dominant. And round shape of seed is dominant. So all three are dominant traits in the case of the third option. In the fourth case, so this table you have to learn from the NCERT, the 7 pairs of contrasting traits. Okay, the 7 pairs of contrasting traits is very, very important. Only then will you be able to tell which is dominant, which is recessive. So wrinkled shape is recessive. Yellow pod, is it dominant or recessive? It is recessive. Axial flower position is dominant. The only option where all of them are dominant is the third option. A man with blood group A marries a woman with blood group B. What were all the possible blood groups of their offspring? So I am going to assume that the man with blood group A has a genotype of I capital A small I, because small I is recessive, as you all know, isn't it? Now what about a man with blood group B? I am going to assume that his genotype is IB small I. So if you take a cross between IA small I and cross it with a person who is IB small I, so this, the mother or the woman, can others see what I'm writing or you cannot see? You're not able to see writing, huh? From that time you're not seeing. You should have told me, no? I'm writing so much from that time. Nobody saw. Only this question, is it? Okay, okay. Wait 1 minute. Now can you see? Oh God. Okay, 1 minute. Let me unshare it and share it again. Now can you see? Okay, thank God. Yeah, so let us consider the male is IA, small I, sorry, not male. Yeah, a man with blood group A. So this man is IA and small I is crossed or is marrying a woman with blood group B. So I'm going to consider the woman to be IB and small I. So this man is going to produce two types of sperm, 50% with IA and 50% with small I. And this woman is going to produce two types of egg, 50% with IB and 50% with small I. So now see what will be the offspring's blood group. One of the offsprings will be AB blood group. One of the offsprings will be A blood group. One of the offsprings will be B blood group. And one of them will be O blood group. So we get all the four types of blood groups over here. This is AB, and this is A, this is B, and this is O. So therefore, we can have A, B, AB, and O. So ideally, when a question like this is given, you assume it to be, I have started with the assumption that they are heterozygous. So you can also do the homozygous thing, and if it matches with the given options, you can select it. So right away, I considered the man to be IA and small I, that is heterozygous. And I considered the woman to be IB and small I, that is again heterozygous. Okay. The color-based characters, contrasting traits in 7 contrasting pairs, which was studied by Mendel. How many were color-based? Can you think of those color-based characters? There were 3 color-based traits. What were those 3 color-based traits which Mendel studied? The 3 color-based traits were flower color, seed color, and pod color. Isn't it? Flower color, seed color, and pod color. Does anybody remember where these genes were located on the pea plant chromosomes? Don't forget that pea plant has a diploid number of 2n is equal to 14. So if you take a pea plant cell, there will be totally 7 pairs of homologous chromosomes. Among the 7 pairs of homologous chromosome, the Mendel studied these characters. They were located on the first pair, they were located on the 4th pair, and on the 5th pair, and on the 7th pair. So only on 4 pairs these characters which Mendel studied were located. If I take the first pair, this is the first member of the first homologous pair. On the first pair, there was the gene which was controlling flower color, and on the other end, there was a gene that was controlling seed color. Then, if I take the 4th pair, the 4th pair has maximum number of genes, and some of them are linked. See, there are 2 genes on one arm, and there is 1 gene on the other arm. So the first gene on the 4th pair happens to be pod shape. The second gene happens to be height of the plant. The third gene happens to be the flower position. Then what about the 5th pair? The 5th pair of the pea plant, the member of the 5th pair had only 1 chromosome, 1 gene on it, which is pod color. And what about the 7th homologous member? The 7th homologous member also had a gene which is only 1 gene on it, that is the seed shape. So these configurations were given by a scientist called X. Blixt. He was the one who worked out this, and he figured out that the 7 pairs of contrasting characters which Mendel studied are not seen in all the 7 homologous pairs of pea plant. They are restricted to the first member, the fourth member of the fourth pair, members of the fifth homologous pair, and the members of the seventh homologous pair. So this question also has been asked in the NEET exam as to among the 7 pairs of homologous chromosomes, the genes associated with the contrasting traits studied by Mendel are restricted to. So they're restricted to only 4 pairs: the first pair, the fourth pair, the fifth pair, and the seventh pair. And among them, they have asked which is the color-based ones. The color-based ones, as you can see, is flower color, seed color, and pod color. So this is very important. Take it down or take a screenshot of this. I think, I don't know if I gave you in the class or not, but this is important. Just a minute, children. See, Mendel extensively worked only on these pea plants, Anish. And he worked with thousands and thousands of plants. And when he presented, if you should also, it's good to know that Mendel actually presented his work to the Natural History Society of Brunn. Okay. And there he had actually presented his work. By that time, he had worked on almost 20,000 to 30,000 plants when he presented his work. Okay. Are you sure? Just check the question and get back to me. Okay. The next question says, again, it's from one of the previous papers, very, very simple question. See, you can also expect such very simple questions straight out of your textbook. You know the definition of alleles. What are alleles? I have already told you alleles are slightly different, slightly modified forms of a gene. So the correct answer is they are different molecular forms of the same gene. Isn't it? So alleles are different molecular forms of the same gene, slightly different forms of the same gene. And what do alleles control? Yes, children, think about it. What do alleles control? Alleles control a pair of contrasting traits. So please remember that alleles are slightly different forms of a gene which control a pair of contrasting traits. Experimental verification of chromosomal theory of inheritance was done by, so once Sutton and Boveri, actually if they ask you who was the one who proposed the chromosomal theory of inheritance, your answer will be Sutton and Boveri, isn't it? But who was the one who made an experimental verification of it? It was Morgan. That's why Morgan is called the father of experimental genetics. He worked extensively on Drosophila melanogaster. And he was the one, once it was established that genes are physically located on the chromosomes, Morgan set off his experiments. I hope you remember, I just discussed cross A and cross B of Morgan. We had discussed another set of 3 crosses also. Using those crosses, Morgan identified a very peculiar pattern of inheritance. Which was that pattern of inheritance? Does anyone remember? What pattern of inheritance did Morgan come across when he conducted repeated crosses on Drosophila melanogaster? Think about it. sex-linked inheritance, isn't it? Yes or no? The kind of inheritance that Morgan worked on was sex-linked. To be very, very precise, he worked on X-linked inheritance because he came across a very peculiar phenomenon which is called the crisscross inheritance pattern. One more pattern is associated with X-linked inheritance. Do not forget, it is also called the skip generation pattern. So crisscross and skip generation pattern was studied extensively by Morgan. He was the one who found out that it is impossible for a son to inherit X chromosome from the father. A son has to always get X chromosome from the mother and Y chromosome from the father. And if the mother is always passing on her X chromosome to both her daughter and the son, but if the mother is affected, her son will be affected because the son is the one receiving the X chromosome. So he worked out the dynamics of sex linked or X linked inheritance. This is a very simple question. Gregor Johann Mendel was the one who gave the laws of inheritance. Sutton and Boveri were the ones who proved the chromosomal theory of inheritance, who gave the chromosomal theory of inheritance. Henking was the one who discovered a structure during when he was studying the spermatogenesis in insects. He found that while he was tracing the process of spermatogenesis, he found 50% of the sperm had a structure in their nucleus which the other 50% did not have. Isn't it? So what about the what was that structure referred to as by him? He called it as X body, which later came to be known as X chromosome. So he was the one who discovered the XXX0 system of sex determination that is seen in insects. In insects, the males have only one single X chromosome. Don't forget, this is male heterogamety. And Morgan was the one who obviously identified or who worked along with Drosophila melanogaster, that is fruit flies. X naught, again, we were just discussing now, X naught type of sex determination. So that is XXX naught. XXX naught type of sex determination and XXXY type of sex determination. In both these cases, if you remember, it is only the male who is producing two different types of sperm. Yes, it is a case of male heterogamety. And if you know that female heterogamety is ZW and ZZ is one and Z naught and ZZ is the other. ZW, ZZ is very common among fowl, among reptiles and fishes, etc. Z naught and ZZ is common among moths and butterflies. Females are producing two unlike type of gametes in case of female heterogamety. In male heterogamety, male is producing unlike type of gametes. Genes which code for a pair of, again, a repetition, we already learned that slightly different forms of a gene that code for a contrasting pair of traits are called alleles. So the correct answer is alleles or allelomorphs. Dihybrid test cross. If you conduct a monohybrid test cross, I told you, you get a ratio of 1:1. What if you conduct a dihybrid test cross? You will get a 1:1:1:1 ratio. What about law of segregation? Because of law of segregation, the gamete will either have a dominant allele or a recessive allele. It will never have a mix of both dominant and recessive. So we call such a gamete as a pure gamete. So therefore, law of segregation is nothing but purity of gametes. What about law of independent assortment? Mendel he came up with the conclusion of law of independent assortment after he had conducted his dihybrid cross. And ABO system, we already learned, that is the multiple allelism and codominance. Both of them is explained well by which is that ABO blood group, isn't it? In sickle cell anemia, the shape of RBCs under oxygen tension they become elongated and curved. And don't forget, sickle cell anemia, lots of cases In lots of books, it is considered recessive. Actually, it is somewhat incompletely dominant, actually, we would say. Or I would like to call it as co-dominant. Co-dominant it is. But in NCERT, they have considered it as recessive. Okay, that means you have two genes. One is a gene for normal hemoglobin, and one is a gene for sickle cell hemoglobin. What if a person has both normal gene HBA and HBA? If he has HBA, he will be fully normal. What if a person has HBS, he will be sickle cell anemic. Now comes the codominant part, which is why I told you it is codominant. If a person has one copy for normal hemoglobin and one copy for sickle cell hemoglobin, then you know he will be called as sickle cell trait, we call it. It is not sickle cell anemia or sickle cell disease. It is called sickle cell trait. Actually, a person with sickle cell trait is as good as unaffected. He is not affected with this condition at all. Very, very rare cases under low oxygen tension, under if the blood is becoming, if there is less oxygen in the blood because of too much of exercise, a lot of physical exertion, very, very rarely a person with a sickle cell trait may experience symptoms of sickle cell anemia. The most dangerous form is this, when all the RBCs become elongated and curved like a comma shaped or sickle shaped, and they will lose their ability to carry oxygen, and they will also clog the blood vessels. And that can lead to internal bleeding due to tearing of the blood vessels and capillary network, and also oxygen insufficiency. Okay, so sickle cell trait is actually a carrier. Yes, you can also call this person as a carrier, a person who is not suffering actually. So trait refers to not exactly like an affected condition. Okay, and another thing you should all remember in sickle cell anemia is the gene controlling sickle cell anemia is located, these two genes, HBA and HBS, they're restricted to chromosome number 11. And another thing you should know about sickle cell anemia is sickle cell anemia is a qualitative disorder. It is not a quantitative disorder. Why am I calling it as a qualitative disorder? Because something goes wrong with the beta globin chain. Beta globin of your hemoglobin. See, your hemoglobin is a group of 4 protein chains like this. 2 of them are alpha and 2 of them are beta. Alpha chain has a total of 141 amino acids in it. Beta chain has a total of 146 amino acids in it. Out of these 146 amino acid, yes, the amino acid in the 6th position, because of a point mutation, a change in a single nitrogen base, the amino acid in the 6th position, which should actually be glutamine, which should actually be glutamic acid, is replaced by valine. So nothing is happening to the number of globin molecules. There are 4 globin chains. So nothing goes wrong with the number of globin chains. In all the hemoglobin molecules, in all the RBCs of this person, the number of globin chains will be 4 only. So the quantity of the globin protein is not changing. But something goes wrong with the beta chain of hemoglobin molecule. That is because of a substitution in the 6th position. Glutamic acid is replaced by valine, and that results in the sickling of the RBC. Okay, there is a quantitative disorder also. I will come to that later. Remember, right now, the hemoglobin has, all the hemoglobin molecules will have 4 globin chains. 2 of them are called alpha and 2 of them are called beta. Nothing goes wrong in the number, but the beta chain is qualitatively altered. There is something wrong in the quality of the beta chain. 6th amino acid, glutamic acid, is replaced by valine. So that only I was telling you, the disease sickle cell anemia is caused by substitution of glutamic acid bivalent at the 6th position in the beta globin chain of hemoglobin molecule. Okay, we just discussed this. An abnormal human baby with XXX sex chromosome was born due to. So obviously, if it has 3 X chromosomes, something must have gone wrong during the process of oogenesis. So formation of an abnormal ova in the mother. Normally, the egg of the mother should have only 1 X chromosome, but here the mother's egg has 2 X chromosomes. So we will call this egg as non-disjunct egg. This phenomenon is called non-disjunction. It takes place during anaphase 1. Okay, non-disjunction, and you are crossing it with a normal sperm carrying X chromosome. So when a non-disjunct egg is fertilizing a normal sperm, then obviously the resulting zygote will have a chromosomal complement with 3X. Sometimes it is also called a super female. X chromosomal hyperploidy. This is called allosomal hyperploidy because X chromosome is not autosome. X chromosome is allosome. Hyperploidy because there is increase in the number of chromosomes. So therefore, this allosomal hyperploidy results in super female. So the X chromosomes were supposed to get separated from each other, but now because of non-disjunction, they remain together, and as a result, this egg, instead of having 1 X chromosome, will end up with 2 X chromosomes. So it is an abnormal egg. It is not a normal egg. Normal egg is having only 1 X chromosome. Normal sperm will have 1 X chromosome, or it will have 1 Y chromosome. What is true about crossing over between linked genes? If you consider that the genes are linked, completely linked, then there may be a very less percentage of crossing over. That's why the answer given here is hardly any crossing over. Because I told you the strength of linkage is inversely proportional to the recombination frequency. So you will see a very low recombination frequency. If there is a very low recombination frequency, that means the genes are tightly linked and there has hardly been any crossing over. Like you saw, 1.3% is such a small number. Only 1.3% of new combinations have occurred after crossing the flies. So hardly has there been any crossing over that has taken place. Which of the following is a mismatched pair of the disease and its symptom? Why is A mismatched, children? Phenylketonuria. Urine turns black on exposure to air, they are saying. What is wrong with that? It is wrong because, yes, this condition is called alkaptonuria. Isn't it? Urine turning black is not because of phenylketonuria. It is alkaptonuria, and this alkaptonuria is also an inborn error of metabolism caused by a recessive gene which is located on chromosome number 3, whereas phenylketonuria is caused by a recessive gene located on chromosome number 12. In alkaptonuria, a compound called alkapton. Alkapton. What is the other name of alkapton? Homogentisic acid. Alkapton or homogentisic acid accumulates in the urine because of the missing enzyme, that is homogentisic acid oxidase. As a result, when you let urine to stand, it will turn black because of the oxidation of alkapton or homogenesic acid. Do not forget that phenylketonuria is also an example for pleiotropy. Why is phenylketonuria also an example for pleiotropy? Because a person who is suffering from phenylketonuria, this recessive P allele will have multiple effects on the body. When one gene has more than one effect, yes, very good. When one gene controls many characters in the body, when it has more than one phenotypic effect in the body. For example, in phenylketonuria, there is ultimately mental retardation, there is low pigmentation, there is sparse hair on the body, isn't it? So all these are the complications associated with phenylketonuria. That's why we can also consider it as a case of pleiotropy. These are all called inborn errors of metabolism. Why? Why are they called? Why are these genetic disorders called inborn errors of metabolism? And these genetic disorders come under a category called gene disorders or Mendelian disorders. You have in your textbook, they have classified genetic disorders into gene or Mendelian disorders and chromosomal disorders. All this comes under gene or Mendelian disorders because they have something to do with abnormal genes, mutated genes. And they are called inborn errors of metabolism because one or the other enzyme is missing. So you have to go through even Tay-Sachs syndrome also. In Tay-Sachs syndrome, another enzyme is missing called hexosaminidase enzyme. The B form is not there, isn't it? Then there is Gaucher's disease. In Gaucher's disease, glucocerebrosidase enzyme is missing. So these are all enzymes which go missing, and therefore some compounds such as in Gaucher's and in case of Tay-Sachs disease, a lipid component such as sphingolipids, they start accumulating in the neural cells, and there is degeneration of brain and spinal cord. So so including this phenylketonuria, alkaptonuria, you have Gaucher's disease, you have Tay-Sachs or infantile hemorrhagic idiocy. So go through your NEET manual. We have discussed the inborn errors of metabolism. Other Mendelian disorders are given in your textbook. You have sickle cell anemia, hemophilia, color blindness. Of course, certain additional ones you should know, like cystic fibrosis, Huntington's chorea. And the most important one of all, which is also there in your textbook, quantitative disorder. I'll come to that, thalassemia. Thalassemia has nothing to do with the quality of the beta or the alpha gene. It has something to do with the quantity. Sometimes the hemoglobin will not have beta chain at all. Sometimes it will not have alpha chain at all. So missing of the one of the chains go missing. That means their quantity is decreasing. So therefore, thalassemia is not a qualitative disorder. It is a quantitative disorder. And what are all these coming under, children? Down syndrome, Klinefelter syndrome, Turner syndrome. Do they come under gene disorders or chromosomal disorders? They come under chromosomal disorders, isn't it? Chromosomal disorders where there is alteration in one or more, there's addition or deletion of one or more chromosomes. You are not changing the entire set. You are not making the cell haploid, or you're not making it triploid or polyploid or anything. You're just, there's either one chromosome in excess or one chromosome in short. So this is called aneuploidy. These are cases where either there is one chromosome extra or one chromosome short. Such changes in the chromosomal complement, which comes under chromosomal anomalies, to be very precise, it is under numerical aberrations. That is referred to as aneuploidy. Okay. Which of the following is an example for a recessive autosomal disease? This only I was telling you about, that is thalassemia. So thalassemia, like I was telling you, is quantitative problem. There are two types of thalassemia. One is called alpha thalassemia and one is called beta thalassemia. In alpha thalassemia, there is less rate of synthesis of alpha chain, alpha globin chain. So you know what will happen in the hemoglobin molecule? All four will be beta only. beta tetramers may form, because this person is not making alpha chain at all. That's why this person is called alpha thalassemia. In beta, it is completely opposite. There is less rate of synthesis, of which chain, children, as the name suggests, of the beta chain. So generally the alpha chains will start forming polymers like this. Instead of having 2 alpha and 2 beta in the hemoglobin molecule, all of them will be alpha only, because this person is not producing beta chain at all. So it is called alpha tetramers. And this is dangerous because when such tetramers are formed, they will go and get stuck to the membrane of the RBC, and such RBCs will, the structure will get altered and they will get destroyed in your spleen. So you will become anemic because your RBCs are getting destroyed. Why your RBCs are getting destroyed? Because of these abnormal tetramers in your hemoglobin, which have a tendency to go and stick to the plasma membrane of your RBC. So when they stick to the plasma membrane of your RBC structure will get altered, and that will be detected by macrophages and phagocytes in the spleen, and they will think that this RBC has become abnormal. Let me eat it up, and they will destroy that RBC. As a result, the person will suffer from hemolytic anemia. Hemolytic anemia. Hemolytic means a lot of RBCs in his blood, they are getting destroyed in the spleen. Hemolysis means breakdown of the blood cell. So one of the common symptoms of thalassemia is hemolytic anemia, severe anemia. Skeletal deformities will be there. Abnormal expansion of bones will be there. Sometimes the liver and the spleen will exhibit swelling. It is called hepatosplenomegaly. Okay. And what you also need to remember is alpha thalassemia is controlled by a set of 4 alleles, or let me call them as 4 genes, on chromosome number 16. And beta thalassemia is controlled by a set of 2 genes on chromosome number 11. So if I take a chromosomal pair, say I have taken chromosome number 16, so I will show you what these 4 genes are. Say on one of it you will have HbA1 and HbA2. The other one, the corresponding matching allele will be HbA1 dash and HbA2 dash. So 4 alleles are there which regulate alpha thalassemia. For beta thalassemia, there are only 2 alleles. If I take the 11th homologous pair, there will be an HbB1 and the corresponding or the matching allele will be HbB dash, B1 dash, or you can also write it as HbB2. So 2 alleles located on chromosome number 11 which control beta thalassemia, and 4 alleles which are located on chromosome number 16 which control alpha thalassemia. Reduced rate of synthesis of either alpha globin chain or beta globin chain. If there is a reduced rate of synthesis of alpha globin chain, the person is suffering from alpha thalassemia. If there is a reduced rate of synthesis of beta globin chain, the person is suffering from beta thalassemia. Generally, it results in formation of such tetramers, and such tetramers will, like I told you, adhere to the membrane of the RBC, and that is what leads to the complications associated with it. And such tetramers, another thing you can know, when such beta tetramers are formed in adults, the beta tetramers are the ones which are formed in case of alpha thalassemia, isn't it? And this is referred to as such a hemoglobin molecule which has beta tetramers in it is called HbH. It is called hemoglobin H in case of adult. And in case of children, in case of a child, such beta chains or beta tetramers is called HB BARDs. They are called hemoglobin BARDs in case of children. In case of adults, such beta tetramers are referred to as the hemoglobin which has such beta tetramers is referred to as HbH. So now you got the difference between sickle cell anemia being qualitative and thalassemia being quantitative. Also, you know, the alleles have their influence. Like, for example, out of the 4 alleles in, I want you to read this from your ACE book, from your manual. If out of the 4, if one becomes abnormal, nothing happens. If out of the 4, if 2 are mutated, then it leads to minor alpha thalassemia. If out of the 4, 3 are mutated, it leads to major alpha thalassemia. If out of the 4, all the 4 are mutated, then the child itself is stillborn. The child dies while in the womb. It causes a condition called hydroxypetalis. In beta thalassemia also, if one of them is mutated, it is minor beta thalassemia. If both are mutated, it is called Cooley's anemia, major beta thalassemia or Cooley's anemia. So please go through this unit from your ACE book. A man whose father was colorblind marries a woman who had a colorblind mother and a normal father. What percentage of the male children of this couple will be colorblind? So we don't know what the genotype of the man is. So let me write here man. They're saying that his father was a man whose father was colorblind. So let me take the father of this man and let me make the father colorblind. So I am using the notation capital C for normal vision, okay, and the notation small c for colorblind. Now, human male has only one X chromosome. Unfortunately, this father on his X chromosome, he has a small c and he has a Y chromosome. So he is a colorblind man. I am going to assume that the mother of this man that the father got married to is completely normal. So what I'm going to do is on both her X chromosomes, I'm going to write capital C only. So this man had a normal mother and an abnormal or a colorblind father. Now he is married to a woman. What about this woman? Let us see what they have given us information about the woman's parent. So he is married to a woman who had a colorblind mother. Her mother is colorblind. So if her mother is colorblind, children think that both her X chromosomes should have XX with small c and small c. Because imagine if the mother has a small c on only one of her X chromosome, then you know she will be a carrier, because luckily on the other X chromosome she will have capital C. But very clearly they have told us here that the mother is colorblind. So the mother is X small c, and the father is normal, they have said. So X capital C and Y. So now what will the genotype of the man be, children? The man would have inherited a normal X chromosome with capital C from his mother and a Y chromosome from his father. Luckily, the Y chromosome of his father doesn't carry the recessive C allele. So this man is normal now. Even though his father was colorblind, he is normal. What about this woman? This woman inherits X small c from her mother, but luckily her father has X capital C. So she is also a normal woman, but she is a carrier now. So she is a carrier female. So let us see what gametes we will get. The man is going to produce 50% of his sperm with X capital C, and 50% of his sperm will have Y chromosome in it. The female, 50% of her eggs will have X small c, and the other 50% of her eggs will have X capital C. X capital C. So now let us see the offsprings. One of their daughters will have X capital C from the father and X small c from the mother. And one of their daughters will have capital C and capital C from their mother and father both. One of their sons will have X small c from the mother, unfortunately, and Y chromosome from the father. And one of their sons will have, fortunately, X capital C from the mother and Y chromosome from the father. So notice that what percentage of the male children they are asking. So if you see the male children over here, half of them are colorblind. See, this person, this child is going to be colorblind because he has inherited the small c allele from his mother, and this child is normal because he has inherited the capital C allele from his mother again. So therefore, the answer is 50%. 50% of the sons are colorblind and 50% of the sons are normal. So please understand, they did not give us the genotype of the man and the woman here. They just told us, they gave us information about the man's parent and the woman's parent. They said that the man's father was colorblind, and I assume that the mother is completely normal. And they said that the woman's mother was colorblind. The only way a woman can be a sufferer when it comes to X-linked inheritance is when she has recessive alleles on both her X chromosome. So I've written small c on both her X chromosome. Small c is a recessive allele located on the X chromosome responsible for color blindness. And then they have also mentioned that the woman's father is normal. So I have taken X capital C for the woman's father. And then once I obtain the genotype of the man and the woman, you just need to cross the two and show the Punnett square code. You will get 50% as your answer. The inheritance of flower colors, repetition again, incomplete dominance. An individual affected by phenylketonuria lacks an enzyme that converts amino acid phenylalanine to tyrosine. That's why in this person, phenylalanine will accumulate in the body. And instead of getting converted to instead of getting converted to tyrosine, this phenylalanine will get converted to a toxic compound called phenylpyruvic acid. And that phenylpyruvic acid, when it accumulates in the nervous system, that is what leads to mental retardation. Yes. DASH is an example of X-linked recessive trait. Phenylketonuria is autosomal recessive. Cystic fibrosis is autosomal recessive. Sickle cell anemia is autosomal recessive. Hemophilia and colorblindness, both of them are X-linked recessive traits. If a hemophilic man marries a carrier woman, then which of the following holds true for their progenies? What is the genotype of a hemophilic man? Again, XY. The fact that he is hemophilic indicates that on his X chromosome, unfortunately, he has a recessive allele. Which is that recessive allele? Just a minute. Yeah. So small h. He has a small h on his X chromosome. That's why he is hemophilic. Carrier woman means, luckily for her, anyway, women suffer less from X-linked inheritance, X-linked abnormalities, because even if she has a small h on one of her X chromosome, the likelihood of her having a capital or a dominant or a normal or a wild type allele on the other X chromosome, a matching wild type allele, is very, very high. So if you conduct the cross, you will get the answer here. You will get 50% of the daughters are carrier and 50% are hemophilic. Some of the daughters will unfortunately inherit X small h from the father and X small h from the mother. And so they will end up with two copies of small h. And those are the daughters who become hemophilic. The only way a female can be a sufferer is when she has two copies of small h. The inheritance of which of the following, which of the traits is shown in this chart below? Can you see and tell me? See, normal man, they have not shown any allele at all. Whenever all of you please remember, if nothing is shown, if I simply write X capital X and Y, you have to assume that the X chromosome has a dominant allele there. And here also one of them, they have not shown anything. And they have shown a small c in the other chromosome. So the other X chromosome will have capital C. So this is supposed to be a recessive allele located on the X chromosome. So obviously this is something that depicts X-linked dominant or recessive. X-linked dominant or X-linked recessive? It is X-linked recessive. In a Mendelian dihybrid cross, when heterozygous round yellow What is the genotype of heterozygous round yellow? Capital R, small r, capital Y, small y are self, the round and green offsprings. They're asking you which is the genotype of round and green. Round can either be capital R, or capital R, small r. Green has to be small y, because green is recessive. It has to be double recessive condition. So obviously it's going to be this. See, capital R, small y, capital R, small y, small y. Very simple question. Mongolism is a genetic disorder. Mongolism is nothing but another name for Down syndrome. Down syndrome or 21st trisomy is Mongolism or Mongoloid idiocy, it is called. So it has, this child who is born with Mongolism has an extra 21st chromosome. So it is the 21st trisomy. Again, it is an autosomal hyperploidy. Autosomes, one of them is extra. So autosomal hyperploidy is the condition associated with Down syndrome. A human female with Turner syndrome has 44 chromosomes with XO. That's why it is called allosomal monosomy. Instead of having two X chromosomes, this woman or this female who is born with Turner syndrome has an unpaired X chromosome. Having an unpaired X chromosome is what results in this condition called Turner syndrome. A normal woman has how many chromosomes? A normal woman will have a total of 47 chromosomes, isn't it? 47 or 46? 46, no? 2n is equal to 46. A normal human being will have 2n is equal to 46. Klinefelter syndrome, one chromosome extra. So 47, 2n is equal to 47 in case of Klinefelter syndrome. So A is 46, B is 47. Turner syndrome, one is missing. So it is 2n is equal to 45, monosomy. So this is C. Pisum sativum, I already told you, 2n is equal to 14, and there are totally 7 pairs of homologous chromosomes. So obviously it's going to be D, P and D. Which of the following cannot be detected in a developing fetus? Why you can't detect jaundice in a developing fetus? You can detect Klinefelter syndrome, you can detect Down syndrome, you can detect the sex of the fetus. But jaundice is not a genetic condition. Generally, amniocentesis is used as a screening procedure to identify the genetic condition. That's why you cannot detect the jaundice using amniocentesis.